welcome to Gentle Yoga. I'm Candy. We're gonna take a moment here and just start in a seated position that's comfortable for you. So if you want to sit up on the edge of a blanket or a block, so you can sit with a butterfly pose. You can sit in a just a gentle or cross-legged seating position. If you'd rather lay down, I'm fine with that too. I'm not going to stop you. What happens in your house on your yoga mat stays on your yoga mat. It's like Vegas, except at your house and without the slot machines. So we're going to take a moment just to breathe. I can unwind my hair so it doesn't pull on me. I'm just taking note of how my shoulders are feeling. Maybe I've been carrying some tension. I've been on the computer this morning trying to get some things worked out, so just giving myself a chance to feel how that might have left me. I like to close my eyes because it helps me go inward, but if you need to keep your eyes a little bit more focused on the outside, you can do that. And just take a few deep breaths. I try to breathe to the point where I feel like my rib cage is as expanded as it can go, and then see if I can get a little bit more to go deep in my belly. Just really get down to the edges and then let it all go with a nice kind of gentle feeling of release. All right, so we're going to start a little kind of, it's like a cat-cow kind of shape, but we're just going to move it from this seated position. If it helps to stretch the legs out, you can do it that way too. Sometimes for me it's easier in the butterfly. It's a little less pulling on me. So just kind of take your ribs out to the side and then wrap them around the back, and that'll feel a little bit like that cat shape. And then out to the side and forward. That feels almost like a little cobra shape. So we're going to go back and forth, around and around. We're going to do 3 more circles this direction. And really try to move the ribs in addition to kind of rocking around on the hips. See if you can get that sensation of movement in the back. And sometimes for me, when I first start this, I can feel a lot of that stress and tension that I've been carrying around with me. So when we get to the front and we're kind of coming into that cobra shape, we're going to pause right there for a moment. Just pull the shoulders back, and then we're going to circle this the other direction. Coming that way. Going forward, circling around. Let's do 2 more circles in the direction we're going in. So when you get to the top, again, kind of find that cobra shape. Pull the shoulders back, draw the chest open. Nice big breath, nice deep And if it feels okay to let yourself lean into that, keep the shoulders opening, keep the slight upper back feeling of that cobra, but see if your pelvis will let you move into it a little further. And then we're going to come on up and pick one leg to go straight. So one leg's going to go out like that, and then this leg you have a couple of options for. You can put it up against here. That'll make the thigh maybe go a little more toward the front. Or you can take that thigh out, so now you have more of a V. Or you can even flip this guy all the way around the back. And when I do that, I try to pull the thigh back, but I let my foot go out a little bit. You can also tuck your foot right up against your hip. So this is the gate pose. And you can do it any of these different ways. The leg around the back. What happens when I do it this way is it sort of tilts me into the shape. So I like this different shape in my hip. I don't do this one very much. So it feels nice to get a little change. But if for any reason this causes you knee pain, especially on the inside edge of the knee, do the other shape and even add a pillow to it if you need. So we're going to take a nice kind of turn the ribs towards the center, lengthen out the spine, and then stretch it out over that leg. And some people will find that they stay more upright, and you can use a block under your hand or a block under your elbow. Some people will find they can get their elbow right to the floor. I have like a hover. I just put it right there on my inner thigh. Now, I'm here, so I'm going to just press my arm lightly, get longer, see if there's any more rotation that's available without trouble. And then I'm going to take this top arm, and my shoulder's feeling a little tense, probably still from like sleeping overnight. Oh, just that little bit of movement feels nice. And then I'm going to give myself a moment to kind of turn that arm in so that I feel my shoulder blade move to the outside edge. And then I'm going to stretch over. Now, some people can grab their foot. I am not one of those people. But you can reach in that direction. I imagine like psychic connection between these 2 points. This hand can drift out into the center. You can roll a little in and a little out. We're going to do 2 more big breaths. I try to get the breath to go way down into that pocket. Good, and then we're going to come out of there. We're going to take this leg and release it back. And my yoga involves a lot of groaning. I don't know. I don't know what happens at your house. But I apologize for that if that's annoying. And it's possible that yours make those noises too. Okay, so I'm going to switch sides. Let's get my props kind of out of the way here. And then I'm going to take, so this leg's going to be my long leg. This leg's going to be my bent leg. And again, any of the options that work for you are going to be good. All right, so I'm just kind of feeling out how much rotation feels good, both in the hip and in my spine. And then I'm going to stretch myself out. Oh, feel out where that arm wants to land. And then I'm going to give that shoulder a little bit of movement. And then see. And again, I'm going to bring my arm so that I rotate from the shoulder, try to hug my shoulder blade around toward my armpit, and then stretch out. If my shoulder blade is up here, it feels a little more awkward to try to stretch the arm. If I can really dial that in, then I feel the arm kind of falls into place. And again, I can rotate open a little bit more or a little bit less. And find some place that feels just right, and then breathe. Deeper than normal. Aim in the breath down into this pocket in the front of the hip here. You're probably not wearing jeans that have a pocket there, but you get the idea. One more. And then we're going to come on out of there. So I'm going to lean, bring the leg out straight, give everything a jiggle. And then pause and see where it landed us. So that feels pretty great. If it feels kind of cranky or sore, that's a good way to sort of teach yourself where your limits are. For me, if I come out of a yoga pose and there's a sense of like, like my whole body just sighed, that is an indication that, yeah, that was the right amount. And if I come out of a pose and I'm like, ooh, that's sore, then I know, oh, I went too far. I was a little too pushy. So if you can take your legs out wide, take your legs out wide. We're going to try to go straight down the center here, and we're just going to see, like, will my pelvis tilt forward? For some of us, genetically, the pelvis actually tilts back here. So if that's the case, there's a couple of options. Option one is to make your legs almost more like spider legs. And you can take yoga blocks or even throw pillows. I think throw pillows are actually probably a little friendlier because they're softer. But you could put a throw pillow under the knee, like that, or a block under the knee, like that. So I put the block so the flat surface of the block is against me, and I'm on the corner. I don't know if you can see that, but this part of the block is off the ground. And then when you fold forward, it might be a little more forgiving to let your pelvis come in a little bit. It's possible that you will never get your pelvis forward. That's okay. So here's what we're going to do. Once you've decided how you're going to set this up on your legs, you're going to lift up nice and tall, reach back with your hands, and just give yourself some height. And then see if you can tilt the pelvis forward, keeping that long stretch in the spine. We're going to do this for 3 breaths, and then we'll let the back round over for the last few breaths. So opening up the chest, kind of trying to get some of these secondary breathing muscles that live in this area just opened. A little less of that leaning over my computer kind of shape. And you might be better at that than I am. I work on my computer sometimes in the beanbag chair, and it is not the most ergonomically friendly shape. All right, so now take one more big inhale. And then as you exhale, we're going to let ourselves round the back over. And as round as it wants to get. Now, this is an unusual shape compared to the other one, right? It's very different. Your back might start to feel like, ooh. So that's why I do this. I do little movements. I might go back to straight and then come back to this rounded shape. And then you're going to let it round as far as it'll go. If that means your forehead touches the ground, cool. Your elbows might not go anywhere near the ground. Your forehead might not go anywhere near the ground. You can build a whole stack of yoga props to create a little forehead rest if you want one. But mostly what we're after is this rounded feeling in the back. We're just going to shake it out a little bit or shimmy it around a little bit. Ooh. Okay, one more breath there. I'm going to try to pull my belly button back and really get that cat back shape. Oh. Okay, now we're coming up. Ooh. All right, yogis. We're going to do a seated twist, and I'm going to show you a couple different options for your seated twist. So you can do this is what I'm going to do. Just a very simple cross-legged seating position. One leg is up front, okay? You can bring that knee up like that. You can bring the leg around. When I do that, my pelvis isn't level. So I either have to elevate my hips so that it levels out, or it's better for me to come back a notch to this one. This one is really simple. So you can do any of the versions. You can even put stuff under your knees to make your knees happy. Now, if we're doing this, you're going to lean back a little bit and sit up tall. If you're doing this, you probably don't need to lean back. You're just going to sit up nice and tall. Then you're going to rotate the ribs. And once you get into the rotation, let's say you're back here, then you're going to bring yourself back to sitting up tall and hold. Now, if you're like me and you've got Tyrannosaurus Rex arms, you're going to put a block behind just so you have something to push down onto. So I'm going to take this shoulder in the back, rotate it as best I can into my back, and really just kind of rolling it back, and then press down into the floor or the surface. This hand is going to cup my outer knee, and I might even bend the elbow a little bit so I can draw that shoulder blade down just a notch. Then here's what we're going to do. We're going to, instead of turning the head this way, which is the normal way, we're going to turn it the opposite way, and then we're going to lean it back. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to stretch the skin that lives right here. And if you've been following along with me, I'm doing a lot of this week and last week because it helps drain the lymph that goes from these lymph nodes and these lymph nodes down into these bigger lymph nodes that live in the collarbone. It kind of helps that flow so that the lymph nodes that live in the face around the sinuses and other facial features get a chance to kind of get a little bit of movement or a little bit of stretch. This is not a big stretch in the muscle. It literally is right under the skin. And so it's like I'm just trying, when you were a teenager, I used to get these when I was a teenager, I'd get these really swollen lymph nodes right here when I had a cold. And so that's kind of the area we're looking at, right in that area, just stretching that out. So still twisting the spine for one more breath. And then we're going to bring the head back and unwind the spine. Ooh. All right. Now, this leg that was on top is going to become my front leg in the lunge. So essentially, I'm just going to pick myself up and move myself into a lunge. Now, I don't want to get off my camera view, so I'm going to back up a little bit. And you might need to change your orientation on your mat. But coming into the lunge, we're going to go gentle. So I'm leaving my knee on the ground. If for any reason you want to take your knee off the ground, that's fine. Just be mindful of keeping the package a little more tight so that you keep your hip sockets from going a little wonky. So leaning in and coming back. Not a big movement. And then we're going to come in so that I'm stretching this area right here in front of my hip. Again, the reason I'm doing so many of these this week is that the iliopsoas is a primary hip flexor, or it's a hip flexor. And it's because it's a muscle that is used for us to escape danger. It can be a muscle that also is tightened up by stress. And so just kind of giving ourselves a chance to sort of stretch that front area of the body. Hello. We're taking one more breath. All right, so then we're going to melt the sky back. You can go back and forth a couple times. And if your hamstrings are a little on the tight side, You can move this a little more over to the edge. If you want to get more into the hamstrings, come right around the front leg. Lift your toes if you want to, put the toes down. I like to lift the toes some of the time and put them down other times. And then you can roll that leg out and in, pull back through the hip or go forward. 2 more breaths. All right, so let's do the other side. So we're gonna start with the seated twist and wind up in the lunge. So this is where things get interesting because most of us have a habitual way of sitting cross-legged. One leg is always in front. So now I've got the other leg in front and it's a little wonky. So you might, at this point, need those little extra props to put underneath things. Actually, that felt pretty good. I'm gonna leave that there. So sit up nice and tall. If you want the leg up, you can have the leg up. You can have it wrapped around. You're gonna lean back, get long, twist, and then come back up. Take the shoulders, kind of roll them around. Ugh. See if they're willing to go on your back a little bit more. And then again, we're going to turn the head the opposite direction of the spines, twisting that way, head going that way, and just lean back. And I kind of loll my head around a little bit until I feel like, oh yeah, that's the spot that's stretching out the skin right there in that lymphatic area. And again, it's not a deep sensation. It's very shallow. It really just feels, it feels almost like you're just kind of pulling your skin like that. It's really gentle. And if it feels good, you can let your neck just kind of loll around and move. I'm also kind of adjusting my spine twist as I get a little bit more space for that. And I like to concentrate twisting my spine more, not from the lower part of the body, but really in this upper back. That's the part that wants to twist. I can abuse my sacrum if I try to twist down here too much. All right, one more breath. And then we're going to take the head back to neutral. Take the spine back to neutral. Ooh, feel where that landed you. Ooh, that's nice. And then we're just going to move ourselves forward and right into this lunge. So that leg that was on top is now my front leg. And the leg that was on the bottom is now the back leg. So I'm going to lean into that stretch and come on back. And lean into that stretch. Ooh. And come on back. And lean into it. And then I might stay right here. I might keep doing that little back and forth movement. I like to do a little bit of this lengthening, so I pick the top part up too. Ooh, a little wobbly. And then with your exhale, go ahead and melt yourself back, and you might do a little like in and out. Kind of feel out how that hamstring stretch feels. Wander it this way if you want to take some of the pressure away. Wander it this way. You want to increase that sensation. Toes can go up or down. And feeling out where that lands me. Oh, that feels good to kind of let that turn that way. So that's where I'm going. I'm getting this really awesome stretch right there in my calf. I don't know what you're getting, but check it out. See what happens, man. Last breath, yogis. All right. And then we're coming out of there. Now, come on back to a seated position. We're going to lie down, actually. But for now, we can come back to here and kind of give it a jiggle. I like to do a little pandiculating, which means stretch, jiggle, relax, and check it out. That's what that means. It's what animals do when they stretch, and it's not a bad practice. Okay, so what we're going to do is lie on the back, and we're going to do some stretches with the legs for our last few minutes here. And then we'll do a little meditation or shavasana on your own. So sometimes I like to have some support under my head, so I'm going to grab this blanket. So I have a little bit of a pillow. And then you can use a yoga strap or a towel or something if you've got one of those. If you don't, you can just hold onto your leg, man. Some people can reach their big toe with their hands, but if you can't, don't worry about it. You'll catch it. Okay, so we're going to lie down. Oh. I'm going to make room. Now, I'm really close to my friends over here. So I'm going to do this outside leg first because that will give you a better picture of what's going on, and then I can modify as I need to for my friends. Let's see. Okay, I have a throw pillow handy just in case I want it, and I've got my blocks. So we're going to bring that other leg in and give it a little hug. And then with that hug, just give your foot a spin. Ooh. And then go the other direction. I'm a fan of moving my ankle joints. It feels so good. And then point and flex. It used to be for me, like, because my job was standing up on hard surfaces with bare feet in the not too distant past. It used to be that at the end of the day my feet would be so sore, and I haven't had sore feet since we since we have been at home, so I'm noticing a change there. But anyway, so I've now extended my leg. I could be holding onto my big toe. I'm going to use the strap because that makes it a little easier. I like to take the strap, put my wrist in it, and then wrap around and hold. And you can even take the end of the strap under your hand, and that gives you a pretty good grip that you don't have to hold on tight with your fingers. So if you have a little bit of arthritis in your fingers, this is a good way to do it. Or you can get a strap that has loops in it. Those are fantastic. So you just have to put your hand through the loop. But this will work. And so we're going to hang here for about another 45 seconds. And I can point the toes. I can flex the foot back and push up through my heel so I get a little more in my calf muscles. I have loose hamstrings but tight calves, and so I tend to go like into the places where I have tension and a little bit tighter areas so I get more freedom there. It makes everything feel a little better when things are a little more balanced. Oh. So a couple more breaths. You can do these stretches in bed before you ever get up, especially if you're on a schedule that's not totally demanding now, and you can do a little bit more of what things when you want. So now we're going to take this leg out to the side. Before I do that, I'm going to take this little throw pillow and dial it in, and then I have a little resting point, right? Another way to do that would be with a yoga block. Put the yoga block in place of the little throw pillow. I don't know if everybody has blocks, but probably you've got a pillow or two laying around your house. If you're like me, you have an abundance of throw pillows to choose from. And so now the sensations in my inner thigh, the way that I make that less sharp is I could bend the knee, I could come back a little bit, or build up the props a little bit more. I want to find the right amount of sensation, not too much, not too little. So it feels like I'm doing nice things for myself. Sometimes for me the hip wants to come up. If I hold that hip down, it actually creates a little bit more core work. It's really subtle core work. It's stabilization, and that actually helps us with our balance poses, like standing balance poses and stuff. The more we can create that stabilization impact on the core, it's not going to give you a six-pack clearly, but what it might do is give you a little bit more stabilizing, when you're kind of get off balance in life. Okay, so we're going to take one more big breath here, and then we're coming back to the center, and we're going to go across. So this is where I'm going to wind up kind of adjusting for my credenza. So normally I might want to go with a straight leg. Since I've got furniture issues, I'm going to bend this knee instead and come over into the twist. I'm still going to get this really nice stretch down this part of my hip. And if I take this hip and just kind of give him a little down and reach that armpit out. So what I'm doing is creating length between here and here. So I'm just going to pick that up and then reach this arm out. As I bring this knee across, I get a stretch both in the pec and in this outer hip. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the shizzle. And so we're going to stay and breathe here for a bit. So areas of the body where we have really deep tissue, like the hip, the thighs, the back to some degree, those areas benefit from holding stretches a little bit longer. There's an initial reaction when we stretch something where the nervous system kind of contracts that muscle. If we stay long enough and with a gentle enough pressure, the body will eventually kind of start to trust us a little bit and let go, and then we really get the benefit. It's also, the connective tissue gets a chance to sort of be tractioned long enough for it to sort of start to build a little bit more hyaluronic acid in the layer that lives between the skin and superficial fascia, which just makes everything kind of feel like it slides around, and in between the layer of the muscle. Anything that hyaluronic acid is just a hydrating mechanism. It helps the body hydrate the connective tissue and the skin and the other tissues, I assume, but I'm not a doctor. In any case, it creates like a sense that things slide around on each other a little bit better. You like feel it when you're done and see if that's true for you. So we're going to take 2 more breaths. And the last one here, and I can kind of feel that moment where it's like, oh yeah, things have let go a little bit. And then we're going to come on back. And so you want to kind of feel for that on your own. Sometimes for me it's a 2-minute mark or a minute and a half. And so that range is a really good place to start. So you feel like there's a sense that things have let go or relaxed, or there's, like, to me the way it feels almost as if like I'm downshifting in my nervous system, just everything gets a little softer. So this leg feels so much more relaxed than the other leg. Even though I can't even stretch this leg out, I can feel the difference inside. So I'm inclined to do the other side. So hug your leg in and give the little spin. And then go the other direction. And then we'll point and flex. Oh, just to get some movement in the ankle. And then either with your strap or with your hands or holding onto your pants, whatever you got, you'll extend your leg and see where that hamstring stretch wants to land you. You want to try not to pick your pelvis up too far off the ground. If it comes up a little bit, no worries. But mostly what we're trying to do is get to this leg, and if we're picking the pelvis up, it's not really doing any harm, but it's not necessarily doing any good either. And sometimes it can cause some discomfort in the low back, so just being mindful of that. Nice deep breaths, just kind of checking out your stretch. I don't like to fidget, but I don't necessarily always love to stay completely still. Like sometimes for me this little act of like just a tiny bit less stretch and then a little bit more stretch, and then hold that for a breath. And then take the pressure off for a second, and then go back in. Sometimes that's actually more beneficial for me than holding it really steady. So we got a couple more breaths right here, about 3 or 4. Nice big inhale. And then you're going to exhale and come out to the side, and I'm going to kind of re-angle myself a little bit so I get around my furniture. You can add your prop to your hip. Again, kind of feeling yourself sort of engage a little bit of your core to sort of hold that hip stable. Gives you that little extra benefit of some core work. Oh, hi. You scared me. About 45 more seconds here. Sometimes if you've got a wall or something more solid, you can press into the wall or your furniture and kind of let yourself roll the hip away a little bit. Press into the heel. That's an interesting sensation too. So we'll take a couple more breaths, about 3. And then we'll do the other one. And then let's come on back, and we'll come over into the twist. And again, so I'm going to try to create a little length. I'm going to push this hip down just a little bit, reach that armpit up just a little bit, create some space. Maybe turn the head that direction, maybe keep the head the one direction. You can see how this outer hip is feeling. If it's too spicy, you can bend that knee. Or you can adjust the angle, like sometimes turning the toes up or turning the toes down a little bit more feels better. Oh. Bent arm or straight arm, so you can get into that little space around your pectoralis muscles in your chest. About 45 more seconds or so here. For those of you joining me on Zoom, you might get cut off, and if you do, you can go right into Shavasana or meditation. We're going to take a nice big breath and exhale back to the center. And then for those of us that might be watching on YouTube, you know, you'll be fine. So you can come into Shavasana, which is corpse pose, and lie on your back and just relax. After I do these leg stretches, my hip, my low back, everything gets so much softer than when I normally just lay down on the ground. I always, I have a little bit of a extra curviness to my low back. I like to refer to this as junk in my trunk. So, in any case, the other option would be to come to a seated position and do some meditation, or you can stay laying down and do that. But just take a few moments to sit and be present for how your practice landed you today. So thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste. Bye, yogi.